Hi, welcome everyone. We are here once again with Sebastian Ramos and Julie Thigpen, the wonderful people and my friends who did the Processing the Pandemic and Things We Can Practice webinar with us last week. And this is our follow-up discussion from the questions that we received that we couldn't quite get to that day. So here they are again, and we're going to just kind of dive right into it. One of the questions that was brought to us, and we just thought was such a great question, is how do we protect our youth in CPS from online and cell phone interactions that are dangerous? This is really not addressed much with caseworkers, and we don't have a clear guidance. So we are going to actually have Julie and Sebastian speak into this both because they come from two different perspectives, and that's actually perfect. So I'm going to hand it off to Julie first.
Good morning, everybody, or I guess whatever time of day it is for you. I think that this is a really important question. As a parent myself, I am aware of these things for my daughter as she's on internet and cell phones more than she ever has been. There's access that I would not have given her at this time. I have to, and so because it's part of what she needs to be doing for school and for other things. I think also I want to kind of give you the perspective. I'm a Girl Scout leader for my daughter's Girl Scouts, and last year my juniors did their bronze project about cybersecurity issues and how we as parents can help keep our kids safe. And we engaged with David Abarca and talked about how we can manage what we do as parents to keep our kids safe. And so the first part I want to kind of offer is that we are the parents. We have to set some boundaries and some rules for our kids. This is not something that was a part of our childhood maybe. And so we have to be able to educate ourselves about what it is that is the process on how to do those things. I'm going to provide some links that David Abarca provided me last spring about some websites that would give you some information. I will give those things to Susan so that she can post those up on the website. The other thing I wanted to kind of encourage you as parents is you need to have some rules and some guidelines. Discuss that with your partner, discuss that as a family, figure out what it is that feels right for you and your family. I think that some of the place that we as parents need to just be the bad guy. We need to recognize that I might be telling my kids something that not all their friends do. And that's just what it is. This is the proverbial what we dealt with. If your friends are jumping off a bridge, I'm not gonna let you jump off the bridge. And so we as parents might be the only person in our child's network of friends that have rules like, I'm sorry, you cannot use your cell phone in the middle of the night. It's charging in my bedroom. That might be a rule that I would encourage you to place, is that cell phones are turned off at a certain time. I think that goes for lots of different issues, but keeping them safe from things like sexploitation, cyberbullying, and all those types of things, besides just loss of sleep, I think is one of those good rules to put in place. Knowing that the phone is something that you can control in some ways, and some ways you can't. I think the same goes for internet and computer games and platforms that your children are on. Know what they are, know their passwords. It's not being nosy, it's being a parent. You should be following up with what your children are doing and how they're doing it. And your children need to know that. That way, there isn't this whole, you're not hearing me, you don't understand, or you denied my privacy. There is no privacy when it comes to these things, because you need to be the parent and you need to be present. I think that this is going to be a challenge for a lot of parents. I think that we have to be able to use a language where we tell children what we're afraid of and what we know are the dangers. And so this does mean that we have to say things like sexploitation means that somebody who asks you to take a picture of your belly button to see if it's an innie or an outie could be trying to make you more comfortable with taking other pictures. And that's not okay. And so little things like that, we have to be able to provide our children to be able to keep them safe. We all, since they were really little, have been telling them, you don't talk to strangers at the park. But children can tell who a stranger is at a park because they can see them with their eyes. They can recognize that it's not a 7-year-old boy that they're sitting beside on the swing. It's a 45-year-old woman trying to ask them things that aren't appropriate. They can't do those things online. And so you have to have these conversations with your children so that they understand why you're concerned and not just don't tell anybody your name on the internet and don't meet up with people outside of your games. We have to really be able to manage those things. And it's scary and it's hard. And especially when we're looking at the fact that we have children that need to trust our judgment as an adult, but they're angry or they're frustrated or they're scared themselves because they're not meeting up with their friends. And I miss my friends and they told me I have to. And so we've got to be able to have those conversations with our children in a way that is real without scaring the heck out of them, but giving them enough to understand, no, there's sharks in the water, guys. And you know what? There's sharks at our beach. And yet I let my daughter swim in the water, but I also know how to keep her safe. And I think that that's the space where we have to learn those things ourselves as parents, and not just because we think our children are going to get eaten by a shark, but because we need them to be safe when they're swimming. So, Sebastian, I know some things you wanted to add about, how we work with trust and respect, especially with some of the older children.
Yeah, definitely. So I used to work for an emergency shelter, and this emergency shelter was bringing in CPS kids that were coming from residential treatment centers, that were coming straight from homes, from being on run, abused, neglected. And so originally we didn't allow any cell phones. Originally coming in, they always had to check in their cell phones, and throughout their stay with us, they were never able to have it. But the thing was, I used to go back and talk to the kids and say, hey, so you don't have a cell phone, right? And they said, well, yeah. But then I would build this trust with them and talk with them so much and really connect with them that afterwards I'm like, okay, cool. So when you go to school, do you get on your cell phone? Do you ask to borrow someone's cell phone and connect with people that maybe you shouldn't be? And right away, they're like, yeah, we all do.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're looking at how kids actually start to connect, they should be connecting with us first. They should be connecting with us the most and building that trust. And once they start to do that, and then we can start having these other conversations of, okay, well, this is how a cell phone should be used. This is what it should look like when you use a cell phone. We always tell kids, don't do this, don't do that. But the second you tell a kid, don't do this, don't do that, what are they gonna do? Yeah. I'm gonna go do it. Or, okay, don't take a picture and send it to random people. Well, now all of a sudden they're like, wait, hold on. You mean I could take pictures and send them to random people? So rather than that, a lot of what we started doing to transition our shelter, because we eventually had cell phones in there, and everyone was like, oh no, all the kids are gonna start running away. But all of them had cell phones and no one ran away. No one started sending pictures that they shouldn't, because we had so many conversations of how to use a cell phone. Whether we look at firearms, whether we look at how to ride a bike, you teach them where to ride a bike at. You teach them how to ride a bike. And if you see a car coming, you move out of the way because you don't want to get hit by the car. So it's almost the same thing of how you take a cell phone picture, right? You send it to your friends, and that's a way that you could connect. But if you don't know the person, well, great, that's not where you're sending the picture to. So it's really about this educational piece of exactly how to use it, and really connecting with them of saying, this isn't something I'm trying to tell you how not to do something, but how to do it, because I want to see you not get hit by the car. I want to see you make a good path for yourself.
Right.
Especially with CPS kids, keep in mind the power aspect of it. When a foster parent, when a residential treatment center, when a shelter, whoever it is, tries to exert the power over them, they naturally are going to try to take it back. So it's not about a power struggle, rather than we are doing this together and we're going to find our way together.
Right. And I think you're right, Sebastian, is that how to keep kids safe is we can't expect them to take control of their own safety if we're not teaching them that process. And eventually we want children to have safe practices, not because we're standing over them, keeping them safe, but because they know how to be safe when they're not with us, because they're not with us a lot.
Yeah, because we're not always going to be there to say, no, don't drink that, don't smoke that, don't go with him, don't go with her, put that down. It's about giving them those tools that when they notice these things, that they're like, no, I shouldn't be doing that because this doesn't feel right, and no one's going to pressure me into doing it.
Right. And I set up with a lot of the children that I work with, the families I work with, and then I kind of have translated this over to my own daughter and even the Girl Scouts I work with, is who are your safe, trusted adults? Because when things happen that are scary and I hold that in and I go, gosh, somebody asked me for a picture and I'm embarrassed and my parents told me not to, and I did, and now what do I do? Is we've got to help children recognize not one safe adult, not even two, but a handful. I tell my parents and the kids I work with, 5. Who are the 5 people that if something is scary, overwhelming, you're not sure, you need help, who could you go to? So I really encourage you as parents to start considering who are those 5 people you trust, so that when you have that conversation with your children, you know who their people are. And if it's Aunt Susie, who you don't always trust all of her judgment, but you know she loves your kid enough to try and help, and engage you in the conversation eventually, then Aunt Susie needs to be on the list. It could be teachers, it could be school counselors. And even our children aren't with their school counselors daily right now. I know my daughter's school counselor is still providing, here's my email, here's where you can talk to me, let me know if you have questions. And so we as adults need to recognize there's a team of people that want to support and help our children. And so we need to let them know that team exists and how to reach out to them, even in the time when they feel like all they're seeing as adults are us, because we're all locked in the house together. So being able to keep that connection with the people is important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for, because that is a really important question, I think, for parents in general, of how to protect our children from these phone interactions that they're having. The second question we received, actually, we received 2 questions that are very similar. And so we grouped them together. And it is that, Julie, I'm going to give this one to you. I'm running my business from home, leading my team of employees virtually while also parenting a child in their home. Would you say it's better to carve out blocks of time to spend with my child when work, or, excuse me, switch back and forth all day, or a combination? And how do we balance being present for our family and children and work without seeing it negatively?
Right. And I think that the simple answer is yes. I think that if I were to group that whole question into a really simple answer, yes. However, I know that as a parent myself, I'm doing a lot of my work still at home, but I'm also coming here to my office, even though I'm all alone. And trying to manage my job differently, I have to structure my day differently. My daughter's at home with her father all day, and so they're in the management of school. And even in trying to support him on how to manage that, the answer is yes. We need to carve out time. However, we don't have to see that as just a chore. It can be something that allows us some space and time. And so if I look at how to manage that, I would encourage families, is we talked about in our last webinar, the idea of looking for rhythms over a schedule. And so if you're looking for places to have a rhythm in your day, you as an individual working, when you were in your office, you probably got up from your desk every once in a while and went and got a cup of coffee. You checked your email instead of just doing one thing. So you need some spaces to take a break. I would encourage some of those spaces to be for you alone as an individual, and not just, I'm going to go check on my family, but how do I find a few minutes for myself to take a deep breath and, play the video game on my phone for 5 minutes or 3 minutes or a minute and a half, whatever you have time for, but also making that type of time for your children. And so being present is the most important thing there, is when you are going to be with your children and connect with them, that you actually do that as a form of connection and not escape. We talked about that in our last webinar, is that if we're looking for places, I need a break from work, I'll go be with my kids. I know that doesn't always sound like a break sometimes. However, I get to walk away from my computer and go be with my children. Well, if I need that time to be escaping from work, then it needs to be just me. But if this is a way to connect with my children, then it needs to be with my children. Not taking the cell phone with you, not being interrupted by work for a few minutes, but really engaging your children. Hey, what are you doing? Let's sit down and do this together. Oh, let's take a break. Everybody turn off school for a minute. Let's go outside and shoot some hoops. Let's have a dance party. Let's find something that we can connect and all engage in that allows our stress level to come down. We're in a marathon here, guys, and this is not going to be over immediately. And so we have to pace our stress level in a space of a marathon. So how do we do that? We look for slow engagements that are consistent, and we look for places to calm ourselves down and regulate. So doing that with your children in connection is really powerful. It allows their brains to calm down, and it allows your brain to calm as well. And so not time to sit in and just, I'm going to help you with schoolwork, but we're all going to disengage for a few minutes and do something different. So build in some rhythms throughout the day. Sometime during the morning, that whether or not you put it on a schedule and say at 10, we're going to do this. Your meeting with your boss might run a little longer than you need to on Zoom, but certainly by 10:15, 10:30, this is the time to go, you know what, boss, I need a break. I need to check in on my kids. And then your kids, take a break from school. Let's go sit and let's go do this. So having some times where maybe once in the morning, around lunchtime, you all sit and eat together, middle of the afternoon, and then family time at night, to where there's 3-4 times during the day where you literally engage your children, not for hours on end. Don't save all your family time up for Saturdays. How many of us were doing that before the pandemic? Me too, at times, because life just gets busy. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for your children to have memories they take with them that were part of this pandemic. You know what? It was the coolest thing. In the morning, every day, my mom, we would have this dance party. It was so cool. And so create those memories with your children in this space by engaging and connecting and using that time to kind of calm your system and re-regulate as a family. It's not just going on Pinterest and finding the coolest craft ideas and all the things that you should be baking together and all that stuff that sounds so cool, and I wish I could do sometimes too, but frankly, I don't have the time and the energy. And so sometimes my connection with my daughter is reading in the evening and snuggling. And sometimes we do more snuggling than we do reading. Sometimes that reading becomes a conversation instead of reading a book. But she knows, and she and I have been saying this since she was little, that's the best part of the whole day, is to just connect. So create those things for your children so that they can have them. And so I know that it's a space where it becomes, does this feel like a chore? But don't provide it as yourself as a chore. If it feels like a chore, then you might need time for yourself first so that you're in the right space to be with your children. But I really encourage this as being something that we create some memories with our children that we can carry through the pandemic, and not just the chaos and the overwhelming anxiety. So there's part of my answer. I hope that that's something that we can all manage for ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I know that when I don't take my phone with me to talk to my children or connect with them for a few moments, like that's just turning off my brain. I know that I hear that it's harder for women to do because our brains are more connected together or something like that. But like it's just a conscious decision when I make that. It's so helpful for me to just turn it on, turn it off, just like shut the box and shut the work box, and then just enter into my relationship with my children and then come back.
And our children start to recognize how important they are when they get that type of space. I wouldn't enter into a meeting with somebody and say, you know what, Susan, Sebastian, hold on, we're doing this webinar, but I'm gonna answer my daughter's questions, and I'm gonna spend some time with her. So why do we do that with our children? Mm-hmm. And they need that type of space that's all for them, just like our boss and our work and the other things we do.
Yeah, and I've actually found that it helps me to focus better when I transition from one thing to another versus trying to do something at the same time. So
yes.
Yeah, very cool. All right, we're gonna go to question number 3. Sebastian, I'm gonna hand this off to you. How do you help? How does it translate when children have not connected well with their classmates during this time?
Yeah, and I think when we're looking at what we're currently doing, as far as classroom is concerned, or even connecting with their classmates, it used to look a lot different, where they would sit there and they would be able just to have a quick 2-minute conversation. Maybe the teacher might tell them, quiet down and back, but they were able to connect really quick. And I know now it's a lot more of the Zoom, and it's a lot more of the chat boxes, and sometimes that gets really overwhelming for them. So I think when we're starting to look at what it would even look like for the classmates to continue to connect, it would still be these Zoom meetings, but outside of the classroom, because a lot of that connection happened when they were moving to the next class. A lot of that connection happened when they were sitting down at lunch. So I think it would be safe to say that when we are doing Zoom classrooms, that they would still have lunch together via Zoom. And then, okay, well, there's a little short period between this class and the next class. Well, then, just like we were talking about with work, then they could completely detach from school or do the exact opposite of saying, hey, you know what? I'm just going to talk to this friend for a little bit in between my classes. Uh, it's really, really changed on what it looks like. And we were talking about in our webinar, grabbing our old normalcy and trying to have it be our new normal. So what would that look like for our new normal? You know, right before we started talking about all this, Julie was bringing up that some of the kids might have had a little bit of a sensory issue sitting in class. And now with Zoom, it's not any different. They're still going to have sensory issues. So with connecting with one another, there may be one that's been sitting there and not really paying attention to what's going on with the teacher and just chatting the whole entire time. Or just because they're on Zoom and it might be on a computer, they may have been on their phone the whole entire time. These were things that were still happening in the classroom that now when they're trying to connect with one another, they're doing it, but they're doing it a little bit different. So looking at what that old normal would look like and trying to instill it now as well. I know with my daughter, one of the things that she was doing to connect with her classmates is she was playing Heads Up on the phone, and she was doing it with the computer. But what they were doing is everyone was on a computer, and she would have this and blank out hers, and she would need to be guessing. So this connection with the kids can still happen, but we kind of have to change on what it looks like. One of the other things that I was actually talking to a friend recently about was they weren't able to connect. The parents weren't able to connect, but not only them, the kids weren't connecting with their old friends and their old classmates. So the parents started talking and saying, hey, what about if we all get the same board games and let our kids play via Zoom? So all these types of things are still things where they can be connecting, but the video game part, they don't always have that same type of connection, because this interpersonal connection that we're talking about, I remember we were even talking about on our last webinar, where this facial connection, just seeing someone's facial movements, when they're playing a game, they can't always see that part. So for example, with the Heads Up, they were able to see all these goofy mimicking of their body and everything like this. And there was still a really good connection. They were able to see each other smile. Where sometimes if it's this classroom, they're just chatting and one of them is walking off and then the other one's blanking out the camera because they don't want to see what they're really doing. So it's kind of looking at that old normalcy and trying to have just a little bit instilled on it. It's going to look a lot different, of course, but still maintaining, we are going to connect by seeing our faces, but getting a little adaptive as well.
Being creative.
Yeah, so I am going to be sending Susan a little link as well, because there are certain things that what we can be doing during these times, and they're just little short activities that kids can be doing via Zoom. Like the Heads Up, another one of them was playing rock, paper, scissors via Zoom, and even asking the teacher, hey, can we have a couple minutes just to chat on the box? Because in reality, when the homework used to be given or classroom work used to be given, they were able to be working together. They were able to have little groups get together. So just looking at things like that and getting a little bit adaptive on it, because once again, when we are going through this, we are always going to want our old normal. But if it doesn't happen, and then this is when we really start to detach and look for those unhealthy ways of coping with these.
Yes.
Did you have any thoughts on that one, Julie?
You know, I like what you're saying, Sebastian, is that even us kind of learning to overlay our old normal on this new normal is, you know, finding ways to get creative and playing board games on Zoom, you know, playing games on Zoom. finding those chat features in the classroom, allowing the teachers, my daughter's teacher, I was so amazed one day, and my husband didn't get it, is he was like, oh my gosh, on Zoom, all they were doing was introducing each other's cats and little brothers and showing off stuffed animals. And I was like, you know what though? The teacher misses the kids, they miss each other. And this is a way for them to socially interact with each other and not just learn math problems. That's not all school was about. School was about where they connected and where they talked and where they visited with each other. And so I was so blown away by my teachers, my daughter's teachers, like insight that, you know what, it's okay. Who cares? We'll get to the math in a few minutes. Sure, show me your cat.
Yeah.
Those little things that I think the kids need. And I think we as parents, like I said, when I started the whole conversation about what is happening online for our children, is I had to sit and realize my daughter, this is something I have to be able to figure out how to provide for her, because I wouldn't have done this outside of this pandemic, but this is where she is. And so how do I, and then I have to help her recognize where the etiquette is and how not to talk when your teacher's doing math lesson. Let's wait for when it's show off your pet's time. You know, those types of things that they need some help learning where the connections are. And so where I don't know that I would have allowed my daughter to have a computer to chat with her friends online, now I do, because she's not seeing her best friend who lives out on the island and she doesn't get to visit with very often. So you know what? 5 minutes worth of them like doing something that I don't understand, that's okay, because to her it's playtime. And I think we've got to be able to figure out how do we make spaces for them to do those things as parents.
Yeah, and I think kind of that compassion part really, really kicks in. I know you were speaking earlier about sometimes they already feel overwhelmed by all the Zoom meetings, that they just want to completely detach from them already. Yeah. And so even when, once again, we were to go back to our old normal of, well, yeah, sometimes our kids didn't want to go to school that day because they weren't feeling well. They were feeling sick. They were feeling overwhelmed. And with that stress response system for them, yes, they are going to look for that connection. But if they're not able to get that old connection, they really are going to try to move away from it. They're going to try to find unhealthy ways of dealing with all that stress, dealing with all that cortisol.
Right.
I mean, even us, you know, so kind of even looking at that adaptation part of it where, yes, they are going to be connecting, but sometimes that connection piece for them, it doesn't feel the same. So they are going to try to move away from that connection for a little bit. And the kids will tell you what their needs are sometimes. And when they do, you have to be listen, right, with curiosity and respond with empathy.
Good
and
point.
Sometimes they communicate not with words, right?
Yes, but with behavior.
Yeah.
We often want to tell them to use words.
You know, I think that that's a space that we that are in a field where we deal with children, whether we're teachers or mental health workers or, you know, we definitely get this idea that all behavior is communication. We as adults, we as individuals, children, that all behavior becomes communication. And sometimes children don't have the words to say what they need. And so their behaviors are trying to reflect that. That's one of the things as a play therapist I'm very aware of, and I do on a daily basis, that I don't require children to use words to share with me how they're feeling, but I've given them space to pay attention to that without their words. And I think as parents, recognizing that when your child is having a behavior that you can't figure out, that's annoying, that's overwhelming to you, what are they saying? Are they really being disrespectful? Or are they just saying, I've had enough, I'm tired? Are they really being defiant? Or are they trying to tell you, I can't do that right now, I'm too stressed? And I think that if we search for, Dr. Dan Siegel talks about in a book that he has, The Whole Brain Child, he talks about we shouldn't ask why questions of our children. Why are you acting this way? But he very much engages parents to be the one who says, I need to chase the why. I need to chase it. I need to look for it. I need to understand it so that I can address it. But not asking your children, why are you doing this? Because the common response is going to be, I don't know, or just because, right? Because they don't know. Haven't you ever had a day where you're feeling grumpy and out of control and yet you really can't tell why? Or you're embarrassed about the why because I'm mad and I know it's not you, but I'm just in a bad mood. You don't want to admit that to everybody. And so I think being able to, we talked about this before, is grace over expectations, is that having the grace for yourself and for your children, that they need grace to be able to misbehave, to inform you what's going on. They need to be able to express their feelings without the expectation you have that they do it with words and saying, Mom, I've just had enough right now. I can't do Zoom. Instead, they're going to go, no, I don't want. They're going to whine. They're going to cry.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to say, because I'm just over it and I don't like it. And so we need to be able to listen differently as parents. And that's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, we always, I always try to teach people the way that we really do behave most of the time. And even as people are watching this webinar, even if they were to become mindful really quick and just kind of look how they're sitting, they probably didn't choose like, oh, I'm going to lift up my leg. I'm going to sit Indian style. My legs are going to cross and I'm going to be so comfortable, right? So the way we behave most of the time is, it's called FAT, right? F-A-T. We feel, and then we just act. We don't really think. It takes mindfulness to get this thinking out. And so with kids, that's how they behave all day long. They just have a feeling and then they act. And Julie, you had said, adults will often ask them, why did you do this? And then they say, I don't know. And then the adult says, what? What do you mean you don't know? Well, it's because they were just feeling and acting. That thinking part, I mean, they still have so many years of cognitive development left. That frontal lobe isn't even there yet. So even when we're talking about how we're going to get them to connect with one another, well, they're trying to, but then once they get frustrated and they just kind of start to break off with their classmates, we're like, no, you have to, but they're having a feeling and they're acting. They can't think it through yet. And then that's our time to give them that time, be compassionate. And with that grace and say, okay, right now you're attempting to meet a need. What is that need that you're feeling and the action that you are displaying in order to meet it?
Good point.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. And so we are going to go ahead and go to a great question that was asked. So we're going to loop, we did answer, but we're going to loop back again to it just because of the discussion we've had so far already, is how do you approach these strategies with the other parent, if there's another parent, so you can be on the same page? Sebastian, it is to you.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be the perpetual struggle, right? Have you ever asked somebody like, what would you like for dinner? And then they'll like say, oh yeah, I'll take, let's get some pizza. And then you're like, oh no, I don't want pizza. And then, okay, well, what do you want? Well, let's get Chinese food. No, I don't want Chinese food. And then eventually someone says, well, I don't care what we get. Let's just get anything. And then you say, okay, let's go get a burger. No burger, right? So I think that's what it looks like getting on the same page. It's kind of narrowing down your decisions, right? Giving kind of really strict choices of, okay, look, we're going to get on the same page. How are we going to do this? Let's just come up with one choice and another choice and compromise that in between part, especially when it comes to the kids and what they are going through right now as well. We always go back to the grace part of we do need things as well. And our partner, they need things as well. And the kids, they need things as well. And so when you're looking at this group dynamic part of it, it's almost coming up with an all-inclusive. I like to say we shouldn't have tunnel vision, right? Because when we have tunnel vision, we don't see everything that's really happening. So in order to get on the same page, it needs to be funnel vision. It needs to have your partner's information in there and your information on there, and everybody that's in the household information in there. Because when we start to just get tunnel vision, I'm going to go to the room and I'm going to watch TV now. Okay, well, our kid is going to come over here and they're going to get on their phone now, and partner is going to come over here and read now. And then when we all try to come back together, well, we're all used to doing our own separate thing. So it's really opening up that communication line and getting more of a funnel vision of, okay, what are we going to eat tonight? Let's just come up with two choices. These are our two choices. Let's either go with pizza or let's go with some spaghetti. And then once we get those types of understanding, and then we could kind of move forward of what kind of spaghetti, what would that look like? So to transition that over to something along the lines of how much time should one of our kids have on the phone? Well, ask them, what would be a good amount of time for you to be on your phone? And they might say, well, I want to be on it for an hour. And you may have been thinking a half hour, and your partner may have been thinking, well, they should only be on it 10 minutes. So then that's where that conversation starts with the party minutes. You were saying a half hour. Let's come with a conclusion over here. 20 minutes, great. And then having a conversation with the kid as well and saying, well, you were saying an hour, we're saying 20 minutes. So this is probably what it's going to look like right now. And then we could come back to that conversation later. But it's usually because we didn't open up that communication piece too. The other part that I always like to say, anytime that we're having a conversation with someone, if you're immediately thinking your rebuttal, if you're immediately thinking what you want to say, then that's not communicating. That's you talking at one person, that person talking at you, and you're not really understanding each other's needs yet. So once you really start to understand that, okay, I'm going to hear you out, I'm going to listen with this curiosity and respond with empathy of, okay, I see that you would not like to do yoga. What can be something that you would like to do? What are some motions that you would like to do? Would you like to do squats while I'm doing yoga? Would you like to just sit there while I'm doing yoga? Because there's still that connection piece. And once you just spend time around one another, even if one person's doing yoga and the other person's watching, laughing while you're doing yoga, there's still a connection piece that's happening. And eventually, the way that we work is we just start to mimic one another. We are social creatures. This is why this pandemic has been so difficult for everyone. We're social creatures, and especially even more than social creatures, we are pack animals. This is why we've survived for so long, right? Because we've taught one another, we've learned from one another. So getting partners on the same page, really what it looks like is opening up that communication and finding a way that, okay, I would like spaghetti, you would like pizza. How about we have spaghetti pizza? Let's find a way to merge them, right? Yeah. So that's definitely the communication piece on there, is just opening it up. And sometimes it's going to be this healthy compromise of just be present with me. You don't necessarily have to do it with me, just be around me.
Well, and I like the fact, Sebastian, that you kind of talk about having a conversation about what we both want. And maybe that's a place to start for parents, is recognizing what is your end goal and what you want ultimately and what I want. And now let's figure out how to get there. And so, you know, most of us want our children to be happy, healthy adults making good decisions. And so we might have different ideas on what that actually looks like. But if we all recognize that's where we're trying to go, in the same, we all have the same goal in the end, how are we going to get there? And having parents recognize, well, it may not be the road I would have taken, but I guess it gets there the same space.
Yeah, we all have the same morals, values, beliefs. Our ideals take us different directions. It's just getting those ideals as close as possible and realizing we're still independent, we are still individuals, and not only respecting it, but appreciating the fact that they are still their independent person.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. That's so great. Okay, so the last question that I like to end with for us is a question that's going to take us, our children, into the next school year, which is, Julie, I like to give this to you. Do teachers need to do anything to prepare for 2020 and 2021 school year?
Wow. So again, simple answer, yes. I think we all are unsure about what the next few months take. I think we all have been managing the best we can over the last month and a half, 2 months, trying to figure out what's going to be next. I think that focusing on the here and now is where we have to be at the moment. But I think recognizing that this school year has already happened. It's over. The children are participating, they're managing, and we're almost done. I think that when this started, I was even in a space recognizing my daughter's 3rd grade year had changed, and next year is going to be different. And I think that I had a conversation with another school administrator friend recently, and he was saying that we need to trust the fact that the teachers have got teams of people trying to figure these things out, recognizing that they as teachers, as administrators, as school systems have been spending a lot of time and effort trying to figure out how they're going to assess where we are when the new school year starts. All of our children are going to be in a different place than they would have been had this not happened. Every every single child across the country. I think that that's a place that we here in the coastal Bend can recognize that when Harvey happened, a lot of our school children were displaced, and it put them at a space of trying to figure out how to manage when the rest of the country and even some places within the coastal Bend were continuing as normal. But everybody in the country and frankly around the world, this has made a change for all of us. And so our school systems are all going to be in a space that come next year, the beginning of the school year will look different. Every teacher will tell you that the first few weeks, maybe even the first 6 weeks of school typically are, what did the children forget over the summer and what did they learn from their last teachers so that I know where to start. I think that all of our schools will be doing those types of things. And so I think we as parents need to trust that that's where teachers are going to be starting in their schools, and the administrators are looking at that. But I think that as a mental health professional, the other part that I'm aware of that I need to advocate to you as parents, to you as teachers, and even within the administrations in our communities is how are we going to meet the mental health needs of our children? Because every single person has been affected by this pandemic issue. We all have our own levels of what this trauma looks like. Some it's just been difficult and they're going to bounce and they're going to be fine. Others, they're going to bounce and it's not going to be as pretty. Some children are not going to even barely stand up. And I think that the schools, the administrators, the teachers, we as parents have to recognize those types of things, that when school starts, it will not look like what we are thinking most of the school year starts with. I think a lot of our teachers, a lot of our administrators are, I'm hoping there's going to be places where we're going to start to support them on how to manage the mental health needs of the children as we go forward. Those of us in this mental health field, we recognize that children behave their emotional experiences. And I think that the school year starting is going to be a whole new challenge of those types of behaviors. And so as teachers, as administrators, but even us as parents, we have to be able to advocate for ourselves, for our children, for the children in our lives, whether it's our classrooms or our communities, that this is going to be an adjustment for a lot of us. And I don't have an answer. I don't know that the teachers have answers, but I think that us being aware that it is going to be different in this new normal, Sebastian, you've said this many times, is how are we going to return to our old normal? We're not. We're going to have to adjust for a new normal. And I think that the simple answer is yes, teachers do need to do things. Administrators do need to do things. And we as parents need to advocate for our children that those things need to happen.
You know, I think kind of going off of what it'll look like next year, just so everyone kind of remembers, they've been on their phones for so long that when we get back to school, it's going to be one or the other side of the coin. Everyone's going to be like, well, why am I not on my phone? I should be on my phone because those brain connections have already happened. You know what I mean? It's already been so long that the second they get in class, they're going to be taking out their phones more than they did before. And right as soon as it starts, it might be the exact opposite of, oh my God, you are a person in front of me. And I just am so excited to see you. You know, it's almost like when you come home and the dog just sees you and just starts going around in circles, around in circles. It's going to take some time to prepare for it. It's kind of starting to have those regulatory type of coping skills that when they get into class, okay, guys, let's go ahead and get out some of this energy. Let's take in a deep breath. Let's lower it. And also, as weird as it sounds, it may say, all right, take out your phones and put it on your desk just so you know it's still there, because it's almost going to be like this. Why do I not see my phone? Why am I not on my phone? It might be a little bit of a safety blanket for some because they get so used to being in school via Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're still muted, Susan. Oh, there we go.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for coming and looping back with these questions for us. I think it's been really, really helpful as we try to think through how do we keep mental health and how do we keep all these things on the forefront of our minds as we try to discuss and try to love and try to connect with our children. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for doing this. So yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining us. And we hope that this was so helpful to you as it has been for me. And so have a great day, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.